Thanks, Jesse. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon to talk about T-levels in craft and design and media broadcast production. Hopefully that's why you're all here. My name is Joel Cable. I am the Senior Product Manager for Art Design and Creative Media. I look after development and operations of the BTECs for levels 2 and 3 in those subject areas, and now also T-levels. And I'm also here with my colleagues, Sarah, James, and Andrew, so they'll introduce themselves now. Sarah?
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Sarah James. I'm Senior Development Manager at Pearson, who basically design and media broadcast and production T-levels. Andrew?
Hi, yeah, my name's Andrew Hambleton. I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for T-levels. So I deal with the link between employers and providers and Pearson, and acts as a conduit really for messages in either direction.
Okay, so yeah, as I said, thanks very much for joining us. We're going to take you through just very briefly. Well, first I'll take you through very briefly what T-levels are. Just in brief, I'm sure that most of you are very well aware of what T-levels are and anticipating this for some time. Give you a little bit of context. Then we'll go in a little bit more into how we work with employers, and then Sarah's going to take you through the detail as it stands for where we are with the development, I should say the redevelopment of the T-levels. And we'll go ahead there. Sarah, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Oh, sorry. And as before I get into it, if you guys have questions as we go through here, we're very happy to try to take them in the chat. So please go ahead and type any questions as we go into the chat. We'll probably cover most of what you might have, most of the questions that you have. So if maybe waiting until the end until it comes up, or as it comes up, if you have further questions, you're welcome to ask them. We'll try to field them. We won't be able to stop and take questions on local, questions as we go through, but we can take them on the chat. So please feel free to do that. Okay, so just the overview of T-levels. So they are post-16 technical study programs, and they sit alongside apprenticeships, A-levels, and there will be some BTECs that do sit alongside them as well, where they're deemed not to overlap with T-levels. Specifically in relation to this for media, the government have determined that the media broadcast and production T-levels do overlap with BTECs in media. So they have not allowed for the redevelopment of large size media BTECs. However, they have allowed for art, design, and media qualifications. So there is an umbrella qualification that they have allowed for that would allow us to develop media to sit alongside art and design, which I'm personally, I think that's a good idea anyway. However, it's not a standalone media qualification. They have also allowed for the provision for art and design qualifications, so large A-level equivalent in art and design, BTECs to be redeveloped, so that we'll be developing those as well, alongside the craft and design T-levels. So there will be those options. They are designed to support progression into employment, apprenticeships, or further study. And they're developed in partnership with government, industry, and education, with contracts managed by IFATE. And the T-level is certificated by IFATE. The fact that the contracts are managed by IFATE, that means that only one awarding organization holds the contract at a time. So awarding organizations do bid for the opportunity to deliver the contract T-level. And then after a period of time, Sarah and Andrew can help me here, is it 5 years rotation, and then it can go to another awarding organization?
Yeah, it's 5 years, but it can it does sort of hang on to 7 in the end, but because there's a certain amount of retake opportunities and stuff. But yeah, it's a 5-year sort of cycle.
Sure. But the initial awarding organization is the one who develops the T-level that comes out initially. They have a focus on developing skills within 15 industry routes, 11 of which will have a T-level, with a total of 24 technical qualifications overall. The technical qualification outline content is based on apprenticeship standards created by T-level panels to set out the knowledge and skills required. then basically that just means that if there was no apprenticeship standard prior to the T-level, then there is no T-level. So if you ever found yourself wondering why these parts of craft and design, why these specific areas within media, and why not others, that's because there was no apprenticeship standard to support certain areas within these very wide subject areas. Awarding organizations must use the outline content and the off-qual conditions to design the technical qualification specification and assessment. So we are bound by what is in that outline content, with some degree of flexibility around how we expand on that in the content, in the taught content, but we do have to assess those skills. Okay, next slide. So here's the timeline for the rollout of the T-level qualifications. I'm not going to go over the ones that have already come out. You're probably very aware of those. In this year, we've had the rollout this September of agriculture, environment, animal care, legal, finance, and accounting. What we're interested in is the 2024. So as you know, the T-level in media broadcast production and craft and design were due to come out, headed by NCFE in September 2023. That has since been pushed back and changed hands to Pearson. So we are now delivering this. We're developing it for delivery First Teach 2024. So that's the creative design qualifications that includes media broadcast and production and craft and design. Just take note of the fact that they all sit under the umbrella of creative design T-levels, which means that they do share the core content across media broadcast production and craft and design. We also have agriculture, environment, and animal care, and hair and beauty, along with next year hospitality and catering and marketing. Okay, next. So these are the ones that Pearson deliver. In case you're interested, these are the ones that we hold the contract for delivering. And you can see on here media broadcast production, craft and design, and marketing is part of Wave 5. Next slide. Thank you. So one of the, we'll go over structure, the overall structure in a little while, and we'll tell you some detail about that. But one of the main essential parts of the T-level managed by the DFE is the industry placement. It is a minimum of 315 hours, 45 days of placement within an industry environment that's linked to the occupational specialism or T-level route. It is 20% of the placement. Sorry, 20% of the placement can be done remotely. Designed to build threshold competence so learners can start full-time employment in their chosen occupational sector. Threshold competence is one of those terms that is thrown around quite a bit and may not be understood in the same way by everybody, but what we're told that means is that learners can start working on the job, but they will require some support to become fully proficient in the job role. Sarah and Andrew, if you want to chime in and help me with that, if you feel like that I'm not explaining that well, then go ahead, please do at any point. The 25 hours of this can be done as tasters into different occupational specialisms. So that means that if learners are coming onto the T-level and not sure which route they want to go down in terms of a specialist, they can do some industry placement tasters and make a determination based on that. We're not seeing that being utilized very often in T-levels, and I believe that's probably because of the pressures of ensuring that there is an employment opportunity for them before they get on the program. You don't want to recruit learners, obviously, and then not know where they're going to be going in terms of this industry placement. But that is an option that is available to learners. Students can be placed within a maximum of 2 employers. These are the requirements as it stands. There still are discussions going on with DFE, but nothing can be guaranteed in terms of any sort of expansion on this. So this is what we're working with, or this is what you will be working with, and what the DFE currently are saying. So maximum of 2 employers. I think that went from initially 1 employer, so now it's been spread to 2. SEND learners can have 105 hours in a placement at the provider's on-site facilities. That would be you as the provider, your center. Must be completed to achieve the qualification, but is not graded. And so just an interesting part of it, that is that it's not a graded part of the qualification. It does not contribute to their grade, but you cannot complete the T-level without having completed the industry placement section of it. And for the most up-to-date information about the placement, and I've got my control panel over the top of the slide, so I can't see the bottom of it. Visit the DFE website. I'm pretty sure that's what it says.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, next one. I'm almost done with my section, so then we can take some questions if anything's coming up that we need to address for the whole room. So the timeline for creative and design and media broadcast production T-levels. Sarah, do you want to jump in on this point, or do you want me to go through it and you can chime in?
Yeah, I don't mind, Joel. I can go through this bit if you want. So so basically, the draft content, as Joel said, has been released today, and hopefully you've all received that. We then have to work through this process where we have a final approval milestone on the 19th of January, and at that point, basically, we submit all of our final materials. And in submitting those materials, we basically then wait for IFATE to look at it and feedback to us. Now, for the final approval milestone, it takes probably 3 or 4 weeks for them to go through that process. And usually they're going to come back with at least a few changes that they want us to make. And so that process will take the whole of January and February, which means we're working towards final approval and associated Ofqual regulation in March 2024, which is quite obviously a lot later than we would want for a qualification that's starting teaching in September. But these are the timelines that we're working to, and there isn't really anything we can do about that. After that, we then need to go through publishing process, and we then need to get the documents reapproved again by IFATE in a published state before we can release absolute final documents. And so that will take us to May 2024. I would hope it would be early May, and so between Easter and half term. I think it is worth saying that once we get to the point of Ofqual regulation, we will need to agree with IFATE, but I'm 99% sure that they will let me publish a pre-publication version of the spec, which is what we did with the legal T-level. We can also potentially work towards being able to share some pre-publication versions of at least the core exams in the ESP, which are the ones that the students will take in their first year. And then the full documents will be available in May 2024. The OS assessments won't be taken until the year after anyway, and they're very sizable, and so we don't want to detract away from the work of getting the final versions out with those. And then as Joel said, it's first teach September 2024. So I'm aware that probably that timeline isn't what you were hoping for, but there isn't really anything in there that we're able to change in relation to that.
Thanks, Sarah. So that's the end of my section, but I'm seeing lots and lots of questions in the chat, and I would like to be able to address them. I want to make sure that we can also get through the presentation, but we could spend the whole time talking about industry placements. We could talk, there's a lot of things we could talk about here really quickly. And before Andrew gets on to kind of the work we're doing with employers, I will just address a couple of things if it's okay, Andrew and Sarah.
Yeah. I think there was one. I think I addressed it right, but but to do with the extended diploma, and then after that, then there's lots about work placement.
Yeah, so I've done some briefings about the BTECs and how T levels are affecting that, the level 3 reforms in general. It's a big story that, you know, I can't go into in full here, but yes, it does mean the T level in media broadcast and production does mean that the extended diploma in media, any of the extended diplomas in any of the media qualifications for any awarding organization are not going to be funded after 2026. So the T levels will overlap those significantly enough in the DFE's eyes that we will not be able to provide those any longer. We are redeveloping extended certificates, so 1A level sizes. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we also do have the, you know, our little get out of jail card is that the DFE have put titles that can be developed onto their lists of qualifications, including art, design, and media extended diplomas. And so that means that there will be some sort of an umbrella qualification that I'm working on now that includes art, design, and media practices together. And what's yet to be seen and what I'm consulting on now, I'm doing focus groups now, is exactly how that will look and how that will sit and how media teachers will, you know, adapt, I suppose. I don't know if I'm speaking to mostly media audience or mostly our audience here, hopefully a bit of a mixture. And hopefully maybe I think those who have been teaching the BTECs in art design practice and creative media practice since 2019, since those were launched, will be familiar with the way we've put qualification content out in where it's very fluid and it's open for you to choose and design your own program around. And that's the approach that we want to take with these. It will just include a lot more media practice than you already see embedded in the art and design qualifications. And that will allow you to find a route through for games, for example. That was one of the big ones. That was one of my big disappointments. The DFE did not see the place for an extended diploma in games. So yes, that's true. And also the T level, as we've been talking about in chat here, the T level may not be accessible across the country equally. And I think that's just the fact of the matter. We're the DFE have the onus is on the DFE, and I'm just going to say that out. They do the industry placement, they manage the industry placement. The awarding organization manages the qualification and the certification of that annually. The work placement is managed by the DFE, and they've got a lot of people working on that, trying to bridge that gap between industry and providers. And it has been loud and clear and resonant with the DFE and IFATE for at least the last 3 years in plenty of meetings that I've been to, that this is going to be a very big challenge in these industries. We know about we know about the proportion of self-employed, freelance, small micro industries, enterprises, and sole traders that work in these industries, and how difficult it's going to be to find the work placement. So yes, that is very apparent to the DFE, and they're working on solutions for that. One of the things they've said is that you can go to 2 different employers. That's one of the things they've tried to do. Some of it can be done remotely potentially, but we know that a lot of these need to be done kind of on hand on the job. So that is something that we've been feeding back to the DFE, and all of your comments that you're putting in the chat, we will take note of them and feed them back to the DFE and IFATE and let them know these are continuing to be concerns, and that's the most that we can do is feed that through. We can't facilitate the actual establishment of a relationship with employers, unfortunately, and we know that there are pockets of the industry around the country where it's going to be more accessible than others. That is just the T level. You know, this is just the way the T level has been designed, and it is a beneficial thing to have those work placements, but we know it's going to be a challenge. So I just wanted to address that. Let's move on.
And we'll say that, Joe, sorry, that the DFE have allowed some dispensations in other areas. So obviously when COVID happened, they allowed a lot more working from home to be done with certain companies, and in digital, they do allow the students to go to any sort of area in digital. So there is a possibility they may make some dispensation here, but I think it's about shouting loud enough for them to hear it, really, and allow something. What they haven't ever allowed in the past is that it always has to happen at a workplace. So they don't like it to happen virtually, and they've only allowed 2 different employers up till now, unless something drastic happens, like a business goes under, and then it would be a matter of then trying to find another part of placement. And then the only other thing really that you need to take note of is that you can walk with a partial achievement from the T level if you complete the complete the core or the occupational specialism, but you will get nothing if you don't complete the work placement. So everything hinges on the work placement really, and about gaining those work placements really before taking on students.
Thanks, Andrew. A couple more things that came up in chat that I think it would be good to address is just that as Sarah's just said, the draft content, and it's just the content only, it's not the full specification, but the content you can look at, it is very subject to change. It is very much in a state of review and amendment right now, but you can look at that from today, Sarah. Is that online now? Do we know if it's gone up live?
It's Andrew, you've emailed it out, haven't you?
Yeah, but only to the people who are on our actual PVP. So yeah, when I sort of do my slide, then I'll obviously try and get more people on the PVP, and hopefully the more people are on it, then the more I can send it out to. So, but it's gone out to about 60 today.
Okay.
So it could cover everyone. Who knows?
So people here, if they want to get on the panel, can get on the panel and then receive that content.
And then get access. It allows me to keep control of how many people it's gone out to and how far it's gone. If there's a massive disparity between the number of people on the calls and the number of people I have on the panel, then maybe we'll look to widen it out to more people.
Okay. So the reason I was asking that was for Greg's benefit, because he's asking can regular teachers teach this T level with no industry background, just entry camera? Once you look at the content, you can determine that, Greg. I believe that you could, but obviously it's going to potentially it's going to be a benefit. Obviously, you've had industry background, but I think if you're a media teacher and you teach film and television production, and you know you can teach that, then I think you could move over to this without any direct industry experience. And then yes, Michelle, you did hear correctly that some hours for the industry placement can be done on site, but that was for SEND learners only. Okay, let's move forward. There's a lot of comments, but I think we're going to have to pick a lot of those up in the Q&A at the end, so Andrew can get on to his bit.
Okay, can you change the slide then, Sarah? Sorry, and the next one, yeah. So we use employer and provider panels to help us put the T level together in the first place. We do have to have the T level validated by employers and providers to give IFA confidence that it's correct, that the qualification is correct for the industry and for providers. So we're gaining technical information. It's the correct qualification for students in industry. The assessments, they're manageable for centres and students. And so if you'd like to be part of the T-level panel, and it will give you the chance to actually look at the content as we create it and the assessments and give us feedback on those. So if you'd like to be part of the panel itself and help shape this, then my email address is on the bottom there, and you'll be able to just contact me and I'll put you on the panel and I can just get you in with the material itself. We have got quite an accelerated timeline with this one, so there's less contact points, probably 3 major contact points going up to the actual validation. But then after we finish the validation, then we'll be putting together student material and additional sample assessments and run on from there. So the panel lives on to help us with those, to make sure those are up to scratch as well. And it actually then ends up living for the whole of the qualification, so the whole 5 years really, just to keep the qualification up to date. But yeah, we'll worry about that part as and when we've got the panel up to speed. I've already got probably about 60 members on the panel. I'd still like to fill it up with as many as possible, really, because we just like to get as much feedback as we can. Is that enough on the panel?
And lot of people have been asking how they become part of the panel, so they just need to email you.
Yeah. Just
directly,
email
Andrew.
me and I'll send you some information and we can I can get you on the panel and send out the material. And
So for all of those who have you put your email addresses in the chat who would like copies of that, just email Andrew so he can keep tabs of who's been requesting it. Okay.
Yeah, there's no obligation with the panel as well, really. So just help if you can. I do understand that people have got a day job to do as well. So and the bigger the panel is, the more feedback I get. So it doesn't matter if people drop in and out of the panel itself.
Well, before you go, Sarah, too, there's just one more question I think it's worth addressing at this point, which is somebody's asking if they'd be able to actually plan their program based on just this content that's being circulated now. And I would say that it might be a difficult thing to do, and unfortunately, we can't release the other parts of the specification because they're still subject to approval, and there's still quite a lot of change and amendment happening there. So it could be very misleading to release something at this stage that we weren't confident would be approved in the state that it's in. So so you could look at that content, but it doesn't really tell you much about the structure. I don't know what other kinds of things you'd need in order to to plan, the timings of each assessment. All those kinds of things are yet to come. And as Sarah said, we're working to, we've inherited this quite late. We're working to a very tight time scale, and we're doing the best we can for you. We apologize that it's going to be a challenge with this one, but we'll keep in touch with you. We'll do some more of these, and we'll try to keep you up to date as we go forward. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely I'd be very, very careful about using this the specifications that have been released today. I think to be absolutely honest, they're at an earlier stage than we would normally share specifications with customers, and so you can. I'm fairly sure that the content won't end up being particularly different from what you can see there, but I think you do need to be very, very careful and make sure that as further versions are released, you take, you look at the changes carefully. I think the point at which you can be reasonably confident is the point at which we are able to put out a pre-publication specification. That's the point at which it's unlikely to change significantly, or if at all, it's just it will just be formatting. Okay, have you finished then, Andrew? Shall I go on to
Yes.
my bit and talk through some of the specifics? So in terms of the way that T-levels are structured, there is a core part and there is an occupational specialism part. And the core part is what your students take during the first year. And the occupational specialism part is the part that your students take during their second year. So the core exams are basically so the core the assessments for the core is as follows. So the Can you hear me okay? I can't see you.
Yes. I can hear you fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Hear you. We can hear you, Sarah.
Okay, so the core exams are basically split into two exams, and both of those are 2 hours 30 and 100 marks each. They're really very, very similar to the other core exams for the T-levels that we have in existence with Pearson. The way that it's structured is that Craft and MBP both share a core content, but that the common core content is expanded and contextualized separately for media, broadcast production and craft and design. So they are different versions, and the 2 papers for each will be different. So there will be 2 media broadcast production papers and 2 craft and design papers. they will be weighted 30% each, so 60% in total. Now, that weighting is the absolute minimum that we are able to give to the core papers in the T-level conditions. So previously, actually, Pearson have weighted them 66-33 rather than 66-33 rather than 60-30. Sorry, 60-40. Each paper has two sections. It has a section A and a section B. So section A is more about knowledge and understanding. Section B is more about application. And like any exam paper, like standard design, the questions get progressively more challenging. So they vary from kind of multiple choice questions to short answer questions to then questions involving a little bit more evaluation and so on, and application to situations in the industry. So this is the structure of the core papers in relation to what's in each of them. So paper one is largely more individual based. It's about their own development, it's about their own professionalism, about you know, their professional development and so on in the industry. Then paper two concentrates more on the wider industry and working practices and things like project management methodology and how they research in order to find out what they need to in commercial situations. Okay, so that's the core exams. Usually in T levels, to be honest, the least popular part of the qualifications, but you know, they are. It is considered a key part for students to get kind of breadth and so on. We then, the other 40% of the core assessment is the employer set project. Now, the employer set project probably is more what your students have got in mind when they take on a T level. And basically the ESP, although it's called an employer set project, it is actually set and marked by Pearson, but it is reviewed and validated by employers. And basically it's a commercial type project where they have to research, design, present, and so on, and it relates to their specialism. Now, currently, as it stands, we have separate ESP assessments to contextualize slightly differently for each of the occupational specialisms to kind of support learners more in their application of the work. And so it's a much longer assessment than the core exams. It will be approximately 15 hours, and it will be split into quite a few sessions of a maximum of 3 hours each. It will be windowed, and it will take place within a set time scale. Okay, so that kind of applies to both MBP and craft. I think as it stands, and I'll come onto this in a little bit more detail, I'm absolutely certain that there will be separate ESP assessments for craft for each of the OSs. Media, broadcast and production, as we go through, the two are becoming closer. And we're at a point where there are only a couple of tasks that are different. And so in the end, I still think it will be separate, but it is possible that there could be one. Okay, so if I start on media, broadcast and production. So in terms of the structure of the qualification, there's a core, and then there are 3 occupational specialisms, which the students can choose one occupational specialism, and they spend all of their second year undertaking. So those are content creation and production, creative media technician, events and venues technician. We're fairly confident that the core is around 600 GLH, although that will be reviewed, and it will be reviewed with providers before we get to final milestone. I don't think it will go up. Yeah, it's possible it might slightly come down. I'm hoping. The OSs, the occupational specialisms, we've done quite a lot of work on since we've taken this over, and as a result, we're not really in a position where I would want to guess at this stage what the GLH or TQT might be. So in terms of assessments, yeah, I've already talked about that, haven't I? We've got 2 core exams, employer set project, occupational specialism assessment. Then there's 1 per pathway. So each learner does 1 occupational specialism assessment per their pathway, per the one that they have chosen. Okay, so the way that the content is set out in the specification that's been shared with you is that the core and OS content is very, very much presented separately to the so the core and the occupational specialist content is presented separately. So the core's first and then the occupational specialist is after. You will see that there is separate content for every occupational specialism. So even when the content overlaps a bit, we've made sure that we've presented it separately so that if you're, say, teaching content creation and production, then you can very, very clearly see what it is you're meant to be delivering. Then the core is presented through 10 content areas. And so that's really quite basic. We've already talked about those as they're set out in the core exams, and so you'll be able to see, say, oh, number 1, that's that content. Number 2, that's that content, and so on. And they just follow one after the other. The OS is a little bit different. It includes introductory content of knowledge. And then basically it kind of splits off, because the really key thing about the OS is the skills that the learners develop. And so each of the skills is there with knowledge that underpins it, identified for each of the skills outcomes. And then basically the way the OSs are set up is they're set up with performance outcomes, and that's what the learners are kind of working towards, looking to achieve, which is what we actually come on to next. So the really key thing for the occupational specialisms are these performance outcomes, because basically these set out what the learners are required to do as outputs at the end. And as a result, these very, very much kind of govern the type of assignments that they're going to have to do in order to complete their occupational specialism. Now, one thing that, and I don't know what you people are thinking sitting reading these. The most obvious comment about these, I think, is that they are completely different for each of these occupational specialisms. And as a result of that, the projects for each of the occupational specialisms will also be fairly significantly different. I think there is more similarity between creative media technician and creative content creation and production. Events and venues technician is more about kind of the sets and setting the wider venues up and so on, whereas content creation and creative media technician is more about obviously creating content, but then kind of managing that content and editing it and making it ready for the in order to be used. Okay, so obviously, I mean, we will share the slides at the end, so you can look at this in depth, and these are all in the spec. But I'm just saying that these are particularly key to the structure of the occupational specialisms, and I think they tell you quite a lot about what the learners are going to be expected to do. So I have put together a bit of a summary of what the assignments, what the learners are going to be expected to do in the assessments, to give some kind of idea as to what we're working on. The stage we're at currently is we've got through modelling, okay, and having got through modelling, our writers are basically going away and they are writing the assessments, okay? And so it really is at a very, very early stage. But fundamentally, you can see creative media technician, they get a brief where, you know, it tells them what their project is. They then need to generate and process their media assets, track with production log, create a catalogue. They need to edit, update the catalogue, then they need to finalize and deliver and create a lot. And so it's a very practical work-based sort of project. The content creation and production, on the other hand, again, a brief is released and research is done to kind of develop those ideas, pitch them, and feedback. They then have to kind of source things, they have to create media products, and they have to document what they've done. And then at the end they have to review it and conduct surveys. And so again, it's very, very practical project that's to do with content creation. Then the events and venues technician is kind of quite about setting up a production and setting up a set, and you know, and then reviewing how successful that was and planning into it before. And so these are the sorts of activities at a high level that that will be included in those occupational specialism assessments. Okay, so I think that finishes media and production, and I will just go straight on to craft and design, because I realise that we don't have that much time left, actually.
We don't have much time left, so I'll let you get on,
yeah.
Sarah, but really quickly, what I'll just say to everybody that's asking in the chat is there seems to be a fundamental we just want to make sure that everybody understands that the OSs are options. You don't have to deliver them all as a center. You can choose which ones you're prepared with your staff, with your facilities to deliver. Definitely within craft and design, you're not going to be offering all four potentially. Jewelry and ceramics and fashion and furniture making. You could choose one of those. You could choose two of those. You could choose to offer what you want. Same with craft, media, and production. And if you want a copy of the content, email Andrew Hambleton. He's put his email in the chat there. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so I can hopefully go through craft and design a little bit more quickly, because some of the things I've been talking about in media apply to both. And in some ways, craft and design is more straightforward, and which you'll see. So craft and design, again, it has a similar sort of structure. So it has core and then 4 or 5 occupational specialisms, dependent on how you look at it. So if I start with the core again has been given 600 GLH and is so in a similar size. The OSs are to be confirmed. There are either 4 or 5 occupational specialisms, dependent on how you look at it. The ceramics, jewelry maker, furniture maker, upholsterer, which furniture maker is one OS, but it has 2 pathways. It has a maker pathway, and it has an upholsterer pathway. And really, to all intents and purposes, on the OSs, they're two separate OSs. So then, in terms of assessments, it's the same basically. So we've got the core assessments. We've got an employer set project, 1 per OS, which so a total of 4, and I'm certain that will be the case for craft. And then we've got an occupational specialism assessment, which is 1 per pathway, so a total of 5.
You didn't mention the fashion textiles maker there, Sarah, and I just wanted to point out that
did I not? No, the definitely. Sorry, I've just managed to. There is definitely fashion and textiles maker. That's just.
What I wanted to point out about that is that those are not separate. Unlike furniture maker,
Okay.
which has a making pathway and an upholstering pathway, fashion textiles maker is one occupational specialism, and it comes with both fashion and textiles in it, and it's all required. There's no separating into pathways for fashion textiles.
Okay, so in terms of content, it is quite similar. Other than and all the content's presented separately, and all of the OSs and pathways are presented separately. It is slightly differently presented to MBP insofar as you can't identify the underpinning knowledge to the skill as easily as you can in MBP, and so we've got all the skills and then all of the underpinning knowledge, and so that's presented slightly differently, but otherwise it's really quite similar. So if we come on to the occupational specialisms and the POs, it's interesting, because if you look at the POs now for craft and design, having looked at the previous ones, I hope you're all looking at them and immediately coming to the conclusion that these are as similar as the others are different. In fact, PO1 is identical for all of them. PO5, I would argue, is identical for all of them, although the way it's worded in the IFATE documentation, they put to refine product on ceramics, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I would argue that it is identical, and so. And you really do have to look quite carefully to see the differences between them. And some of them, I just think of wording. I don't think they're even like real. Some of them might be real. I'm not a subject specialist, so I'm not going to. But I think some of it is just that they've been edited by different people. So what this means fundamentally for the for craft is that all of the structures of the assignments are kind of largely similar. So we've been through modeling, and we have kind of, for this, we have more one central model that has been taken off, and it's been refined by subject experts in different areas. And basically the working model as it stands at the moment is that there are going to be 2 tasks for each of the occupational specialisms. And it tells you there which so task 1 will assess all 5 POs, task 2 will assess 3, 4 and 5, and then obviously the tasks will be contextualized to each discrete specialism, and they will be thoroughly reviewed and applied by subject experts to each discrete specialism. But fundamentally what they do from a conceptual point of view is quite similar. So task 1 is design and make, basically, and so they take students through the full design and production cycle, and so they design something and they make something according to a context, or what for a specific purpose, and then so they have to, as part of this, they have to conduct research, formulate ideas, and so on. They have to actually make the item they've designed. They then evaluate it at the end. So it's a really quite standard, very holistic sort of making type task. Then the task 2 is basically a test of technical skills. So they will be given a specific specification in order to make something, and then they will evaluate their finished item and their performance. And this is just really to check that they have the breadth of skills that are needed for in order to be successful in the T level. And I think then we're on to questions.
Somebody's asked a really pertinent question that I wanted to address, Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It was around the kind of the methodology behind the assessment in the A level, which one of our teachers here is saying is quite restrictive to their learners' ideas, in that it was too specific and they couldn't apply their ideas to the brief. And they were wondering whether there's going to be more scope for learners to choose how they address briefs in the T levels. And I think that that's a question that a lot of teachers will probably have around these qualifications, and they know how the BTECs run and how flexible they are. The T levels are a bit different though, and I would just say that the purpose of the T levels is slightly different. These learners are signing up to take a T level because they want to go into occupation in these specialist areas. So it's not like an A level in art and design. The A level in art and design should be flexible, I agree. The T levels, because there's quite a lot of specific content and knowledge content that is to be subsumed within the skills, they have to be specific enough to ensure that the assessments cover those skills. And the way that they've been written, if you read the outline content, means that we do have to give them enough steer to make sure that they address all of the content, all of the skills content in full for every assessment. And that means that if we leave it too broad and too open, it might allow for learners not to fully address the assessment. I hope that makes sense. It's not quite an easy thing to explain without reference to the qualification content and the assessments themselves. But I would say that the briefs that you should expect to see, the briefs to have enough scope for learners to find their individuality and address it through their own interests, but also enough parameter where they're going to have to address it as if they were responding to a client brief. So they're going to have to think within parameters. It is not a completely open design your own brief or propose your own project style. And I don't think it probably should be for a T level. It wouldn't meet the purpose of how they're going to be working in industry. I hope that answers your question. I'll leave it open to more questions now. Greg's had his hand up for a long time.
Well, there's something on there about esports as well, Joel, if you could sort of just answer.
I feel really bad about esports because it's something I worked on as part of media as well. The kind of overlap there, and esports has up to now doesn't have any place in the reform, and it's really unfortunate that the government has really based these reforms and the necessity of BTECs to remain, or any other vocational qualifications. I say BTEC, I'm talking about all awarding organizations' vocational qualification offers, not just BTECs. They've based these on the needs of industry for technical qualifications, and whether or not A levels they feel covers the breadth of academic qualifications. And in between there, where there are emerging needs like esports, or there are emerging markets, and learners want to be trained on these, unfortunately, the historical evidence for those is not there yet because they're new. And that meant that there was not evidence for the government, sufficient enough for the government to say we will have a place for these qualifications in the new level 3 landscape. So very regretfully, esports is not yet. And there could be a case for it in the future, and we're still trying to make the case for it, but it's not going to be part of the reform at this stage. I know Greg has had his hand up for a long time. So Greg, if you still have a question there, please go ahead and ask. Greg Rushworth? No? Simon?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Simon.
Sorry, I was in on the last meeting and there was a discussion around, I'm sorry, I'm back to the work experience. There was a discussion around the idea of the fact that maybe we would be able to do more work experience in-house. I know you said it's for SEND learners only. Did that discussion get blocked then? Was it blocked as a no, it's not going to happen? Because we were looking at maybe setting up almost an in-house company of students where they're taking on briefs from actual clients, be they educational or small businesses around, to produce media for using the school's facilities.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Simon. It hasn't been blocked, but it's just not part of the official DFE and IFATE rules yet. They have not made an official allowance for that, but it is something. Andrew, I was speaking to David Pouch yesterday about this specifically, and he said that some centers are doing this, even though it's not necessarily on paper within the rules, but that some centers are setting up a company and then they're contracting out to other companies so that they're actually working for, essentially working remotely for other companies. Now, we can't necessarily condone that because it's not written into the rules yet, but it is a potential, and it's something we put forward to the DFE to consider because of the limitations within the creative industries.
That's
if it's going to work.
The other point I'd put on earlier was you talk about 2 employers maximum. I mean, I've just got work experience for 2 of my year 13s who had to be 18 before they could go on it, I might add, because of insurance purposes within the media industry. But that is a week's, they're on the BTEC course, but that is a week's work experience on a short film. But there's a lot of those about. And if you're going to say 2 employers, then essentially they might be able to do a week here and a week there, but that's not going to cover 315 hours.
We've also put forward, and so have many teachers and many industry experts have put forward to the DFE and IFATE that more than 2 would help in these, especially in these industries. So we put that forward. We'll see whether they listen. I think that's the best we can say. Is we've put it forward a lot.
I'd say after the last webinar we had, I did send out a poll to all the people who were on the webinar and got all of their ideas together of how we could possibly get around this in these sort of media and craft sectors. And I sent them all to IFATE, and they just sent me back a list of what they've already got in place, basically, against every comment. So they weren't particularly open, but then we do have a meeting with the DFE in a couple of weeks' time, actually, where we can start broaching this again. And we've got other. I do know that there's an awful lot of people have said in the background that it's just not going to work for these particular industries. So I don't know. They are listening, but they haven't come to any conclusions or ideas or how they're going to broach this in a different way at the moment. It's still sort of stuck where it is. But I suppose the more we talk about it, the more hopefully we can make the DFE understand that they have to look at this in a different way.
Thank you. That is, I'll hold out hope, really.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, for us, I mean, I know it sounds quite mercenary, but for us, it will hold back the scaling of this qualification, and we want it to grow and be big. So it's only good for us as well, really.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just before we take another question, Laura, for the esports thing, it's not our decision. Unfortunately, it's the government's decision. I don't want you to get the wrong end of the stick that we're deciding not to. We want to continue with our esports qualifications, and we know how valuable it is to the industry, but unfortunately, it's not. And we've put forward the case that it should be allowed, but it's not within our power to say yes or no to that. Unfortunately, there's no list of who had their hand up first. Does anybody know if it was Simon? You've had yours. You can put your hand down. Greg, if you wanted to have yours, you can. Can we go to Elaine Whitehead?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So basically, if we choose not to do T-level, we can still be funded to do art design and media, extended diploma, BTEC, the new program coming out in 2026. Is that right?
I would say yes with 100% certainty, but I still have to submit those to the DF, I mean to Ofqual and DFE, and they have
Right.
to be approved. So the only reason I would hesitate to say yes 100% is that these new qualifications still have to go through an accreditation process. Now I'm confident we'll get through that accreditation process,
Right.
but that's the only, you know, there will be qualification out alternative to the T level.
Because there won't be any, you know, if there's just the art craft one and there's the media one, there's a massive gap there with fine art, with 3D, with, you know, there's just a huge
no.
gap. Graphics.
That would all be part of the art and design and media qualification, BTech
Yeah.
qualification. So it would be like
Right.
taking your existing art and design practice or art and design national BTech,
Yeah.
you know, and adding media content, you know, adding the whole creative media qualification to it and putting it together.
Right.
And then
Okay.
saying you can design your program to specialize in whichever area you'd like
In
to,
media or in art and design.
as a broad-based media, as a broad-based art, or
Yeah.
even more creatively as a you know,
Art
as
design.
something that draws from both.
Yeah.
Graphics, you
Yeah.
know, draws from both. Games draws from
Which is
all
what we
across it.
do. We
Yeah.
do that here already. So it's a kind of
Yeah,
splitting
exactly.
it
So,
and being so restrictive is just doesn't
yeah.
feel nice.
So
Sorry.
so I think most centers are already delivering a mixture of
Yeah.
some media and some art and design. So this will just bring it together.
Right.
So thanks for that, Elaine. So yes, that would be the case. So we have Simon. No, Simon's already gone. Stephen.
Hi, Joel.
Nice.
I was just wondering if you could just re-clarify the position with games design, because I from the reading I've done so far, I thought it was going to be coming under the IT specification. Correct me if I'm wrong. If it's not coming under the IT specification, is it just not going to be in this T level at all?
Can you say that again, Stephen? I missed part of it. Did you say the games being part of the IT?
Yeah, so my understanding was the games design was part of the new IT T level. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Games coding, you know, games as far as the coding side of it is part of the IT, but it's a very limited part of it. The T level in digital is not just about games. So if you go on to it to do games coding, you won't be doing just games coding. There's a lot more to it than that's required. So it's not a specialist games coding qualification, unfortunately. And unfortunately, the media broadcast and production qualification, the T level has nothing to do with games either, games design. So, like Elaine, you would be in the situation of delivering a BTech with the extended diploma in art design and media, which would allow for you to do your games design and development through it. Or we'll also be releasing a 360 GLH 1A level equivalent in games design, which is also on the DFE's list of allowed qualifications that we can develop. So we are developing that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem, Stephen. I think that's all the questions. We've gone over time. I know there are more questions in the chat. I don't know, Andrew and Sarah, if you want to stay and try to answer any of these. If people are still happy, I'm happy to talk a little bit longer.
I'm happy.
Let's just make.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I think there is one thing we didn't mention was the fact that there has been a change fairly recently in T levels, that the core assessments had to be sat at the same time the very first time. So the employer set projects and the exams had to be sat at the same time. They've been decoupled now, so that you can you can choose to sit your students through the exams and then later sit them through the employer set project on another window if you wanted to, or vice versa. That's to try and make it a little bit easier to actually sort of sit. So that's, I think that's something we didn't sort of mention. It's just another complication, I think, with T levels, really.
Yeah. Mark has mentioned that UAL have creative practice, which runs across media as communication. So I think that is the idea. And we have a foundation art, design, and media program, so we've also blended art, design, and media already. So there is an established practice of doing this. But what I would say is that our qualification will be better than the UAL one. So, you know, have a look at it.
Very true.
I'm not ashamed to say that. Okay, any other, if anybody wants to shout out any more questions that we're missing in the chat, because there's been so much chat, we haven't been able to follow it specifically.
So Greg and Elaine have still got your hands up. I don't know if you've
Oh, sorry.
or you just left it up. Just ask another
Sorry.
question. We don't.
Sorry.
OS is externally assessed, so that's
I need
the OS.
I need
Sorry, Elaine, I think you're still on.
I was just
not on.
I was just going to say I need to leave now, but thank you very
Okay,
much
thanks for
I was
joining
just
us, Elaine.
typing that. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Sarah did mention, I think, or maybe Andrew did, that the OS assignments, we don't know whether they'll be externally assessed or internally assessed and then externally moderated yet. That's something that's still yet to be determined, and it's still being looked at. If anybody has thoughts on that and they'd like to share those now, it might be helpful in terms of feedback.
We've still got Greg and John and Josh have got their hands up. So I don't know which one was first. If Greg, do you want to ask your question?
I've asked Greg and he hasn't responded. Sure. Oh, sorry. Hi, Greg.
Yeah, so I know I couldn't get unmuted. I'm limited signal here at school. Hanging out of the window. Just want to make it clear. I know you spoke about this before, so apologies covering old ground. You were saying about you developing, but it's obviously nowhere near accreditation. Another extended diploma course, but under the banner of not just media, was it art and design as well?
Art, design, and media.
Would that be? That's the one, yeah. So is that something potentially then, if you got the go-ahead, it'll be similar to what we're teaching right now as kind of like a backup for those concerns that we don't have the facilities to offer the industry placements?
Yeah, and I believe that's why the DFE have allowed for it, to be honest. I think that there's an understanding that the T levels are not for everybody. The T levels don't cover the entirety of media, of creative media. They don't cover the entirety of art and design. So there are big gaps to be left if they were to defund everything in terms of a BTEC. So there is an allowance for the BTECs to exist, and that is as an alternative to the T level. It's not a backup. It's an alternative. It's a legitimate alternative. Of course, it is a backup for those who want to deliver the T level, but find that they can't for one reason or another in terms of industry placement. But it's also an alternative to those learners who don't feel that the T level is right for them, who don't know what part of the industry they want to go into and want something more flexible. It serves a different purpose.
Okay, perfect. So it's an opportunity if we struggle on the placement sides, going through there, and it's just it'll pick up pretty much as the current one closes down, I guess, because we've got another year? Is it 2 years? I think funded on this one.
2026 is when we anticipate the funding to run out for the current BTECs in these subjects, and then that's when it'll kick in for the new qualification for the the new BTECs that sit in that space.
Okay, perfect. So not guaranteed, but you've got reasonable assurance it should maybe go through.
Reasonably. You're never 100% sure, but we should be able to go, even if it were not to get accredited first time, we should be able to review it and then get it accredited, within the same window. So yeah, it should be okay.
Perfect. That's all for me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. So is it John next? John Stevens? Oh, sorry. John's put his message here in the chat. Equipment list. Yeah, so I've made a note in the chat earlier, John, that the equipment list has been a hot topic here today, and we've recognized that you need time to buy and prepare for and plan facilities, departments, materials, costs, do your costings and budgeting. That's a big piece of this. So whilst we're not 100% finalized on what that will be, we've taken note of that, and I think we need to try to we'll try to get an essential list out as soon as possible. yet you have deadline to spend funds. What is your deadline to spend funds, John? Is it the end of the year? Or is it April? Is it the financial year? Whilst John types in the chat, should we take Josh? Sorry, Josh.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi Josh.
Hi, so it's just a very quick question. You might not be at this stage yet. I wanted to check, is it still the case that it is a strict entry requirement that learners have a 4 and above in English and maths, this qualification?
No. Good. Andrew, I'll let you talk about that.
No, it's not. That was taken out almost at the start of T levels. So there is no entry requirement whatsoever. That's up to the college to decide what the entry requirement is. And as with all qualifications at this level, if they don't have the English and maths at the correct level, they've got to carry on taking it until they finish. But there's no requirement. And there was at the beginning, it wasn't just a requirement of coming in with the English and maths. So the requirement was you had to have got English and maths at level 4 to gain the T level at the end, but that's been taken away.
That's great, thank you.
John, if you could let us know which OS you're going to be delivering, that'd be helpful. I don't know that we'll be able to get a list in 2 to 3 months because the assessments we're still designing will determine, and the content that's still being refined will determine kind of the equipment and the facilities that you need. But we should be able to get a basic list down for what you would need as a basic to deliver the qualification, I would hope, in that time.
I think we'd also be trying to put it together, wouldn't we, really, Joel, so that it was deliverable at colleges. So we wouldn't be putting in things in there that colleges can't access.
No, of course. Of course. The content, though, that Andrew can email to you will give you an indication of what kinds of practices and techniques and, if you're doing ceramics, that you're going to need kilns and, things like that. It will give you an indication. So if you see anything there that worries you, you can feed that back to Andrew, and we'll take that on board.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah. Sorry to keep you waiting, Sarah.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not at all. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Limited internet. So you're talking about core in the first year and second in the specialism in the second year. So there's not really going to be anything practical in the first year. Doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So
go
on, John. Well, we don't specify that you've got to deliver it in any particular way. So you can deliver the core and the occupational specialism at the same time if you want. You can overlap them. You can deliver them in part. So there isn't a first year and second year as such, but the core does underpin the knowledge of the occupational specialism. But I would imagine there would need to be some sort of overlapping, really.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, but it's that the exams for the specialism take place in the second year.
Yeah, the assessments for the occupational specialisms, which are not exams, do take place in the second year, because obviously those are when they're developing those skills and they're demonstrating those skills. Of course, you're going to want them to be as good at those skills as possible. So it makes sense to assess them in the second year, and makes sense to try to get the core exams out of the way in the first year, because they are quite general in terms of general practices about research, about understanding things around creative practices. So it makes sense to do it that way. But as Andrew said, you can start delivering OS content at the same time so that they've got an understanding and they can just start doing workshops and practical work alongside that.
Okay, well, thanks very much. It's been very helpful. I'm going to leave because I need to be somewhere by 5:30. But
okay,
thank you very much.
Joining us.
I don't think we mentioned it. Did we mention about the resit opportunity? So one of the things that there, when we initially started with T levels, there wasn't a resit opportunity at all. But we realised almost straight away that if the students took their core exams and didn't do particularly well, that the core result, when added to the occupational specialist result, was almost it was tied into it in effect. So we argued for a resit opportunity. So there is a resit opportunity. I think we'll probably run that in October, November time or something like that. And then also the student can resit again at the end of the second year. So there is an opportunity because the core and the occupational specialism are added together to make the final result.
So that would be a
Okay.
resit of the exams in the core, not the ESP or both.
No, it's an opportunity for both. Yeah.
Okay. I can't see that there would be resits of the OS assignments, really, because you're going to be sitting them in year 2, and there's going to probably be one window for those because they're
Yes.
quite large. So I can't imagine those running in January and June, with kind of resits happening at the end.
No,
Because
there is only one sit per year of the occupational
Yeah.
specialism. I suppose the student could be taken on for another year again by the college, but I'm not sure how that would work with funding.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've answered everybody who's had their hand up, and I think we've done as much as we can with the chat. I'll put my email address in the chat in case anybody's got further questions and they need to get in touch with us. And once again, thanks so much for joining us, and have a lovely weekend. Is there anything else, Sarah, from your point of view?
No, there's nothing else from me. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh,
The
hi,
recording will be made available. Sorry, my name is Abu.
Hi, Abu. Jezzy, do you know when the recording will be made available to the delegates?
Yeah, 24 to 48 hours.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Cheers.